The Age of Uncertainty podcast by Nigel Baker. A history of prediction in 10 objects.
Welcome to our latest episode of the Age of Uncertainty podcast. And this episode is, for me, a real interesting one. You see, when I started this podcast, when I broadcast on LinkedIn that I was going to create this type of video show to fill our time in isolation, I actually asked for some requests on particular topics people would like covered or particular subjects people are interested in. And I got from someone a very interesting one. Casper below gave me the history of predictability in 10 artifacts. Now, I don't know if he was actually kidding with that topic. He may have been trolling a little bit or may have had something else in mind. But never let it be said that Nigel shirks from a challenge. That's not who I am, so I decided to take it on with a little tweak. So rather than the history, because frankly I'm no historian, I've created a history of prediction in 10 objects. I'm going to admit I took a little bit of inspiration from a few key areas. The British Museum had a history of mankind in 100 objects, so I've kind of done a cut down version of that. And the research I've done has basically been my own meandering mind, a bit of Wikipedia and a bit of the internet. So if you disagree, well, that's absolutely fine. No one said this was going to be true, but it is, I think, my personal opinion today about a history of prediction. There were some highly commended objects that just missed out on the 10. I may mention them at the end and you can see if they would go into your particular top 10 of objects that cover the history or a history of prediction. Should we head off and get number 1? Let's do it. Okay, what does prediction actually mean? Well, if you look at any online directory, it has it down as some sort of forecast or educated guess. I think it comes from something to do with Latin, like known beforehand or make known beforehand. But where do we start this conversation on prediction? Do we start in Roman times? Do we start earlier? Do we go right back to the start of man, of prehistory? Yeah, what about that? 2001. Now, here's my wife's copy of 2001. I don't know if you've ever seen the film or read the book. Interestingly, hers is actually signed by Arthur C. Clarke. But at the start of that story, we see pre-man. Pre-man has no awareness of the future or the past, very limited awareness of death or life, very much an animal. And in the story of 2001, man is almost given sentience by aliens from space. Let's not go there. I got completely sucked into this story the other day and started thinking whether the monoliths from the story are actually a symbol of coaching or of a coach. And in the film, those monoliths are black, and in the book they're transparent. And I started thinking, which of those metaphors is best for a coach? Black, absorbing information, or transparent, letting information? Anyway, that's completely not the point of this video. So I'm not going to go this far back. Sorry, cut the music. Thank you. I'm not going to go this far back into prehistory. What I am going to do, though, is come forward a little bit in time from then. Object 1 is chicken bones. Here's a chicken bone. Lovely. It could have been a crystal ball. It could have been... I was thinking of using Taro for this object. I remember years ago, I slightly mocked Taro on a workshop and someone there said, you shouldn't mock things you don't understand. The power of Taro. So I'm not going to go there today. So instead, I've chosen chicken bones. You know, the things that witch doctors used to use. They would get a range of bones and shells together and blood and spit and mix them all together and then read those bones to give forecast or prediction to their ruler. You see, in ancient times, man really didn't know why a lot of things were happening, why volcanoes blew up, why that tornado destroyed their village. And so man started coming up with excuses for this. They invented ancient pagan gods. They also invented the idea of supernatural prophecy. Some clever people would read the chicken bones and give warning to the king that something bad was going to happen. Now, did those witch doctors actually believe what they were reading? Were they sort of pattern matching into those random objects in that dish to try and come up with some logical answer for the chaos of the universe? Or were they super clever? And were they aware of what the king wanted to hear? Your Highness, I have read the bones, and the bones say you will be victorious in battle tomorrow. What if you're wrong, witch doctor? Well, if I'm wrong, you'll never know, will you? Chicken bones, representing prediction in terms of prophecy, the supernatural form of prevision, prediction, reading the tea leaves, reading the ley lines, and imagining the future from our limited understanding of the present. My second object is the meek potato. Now this is going to represent basically prediction in agriculture. Yes, I know, potatoes didn't come over to Europe till the Middle Ages. It's not exactly an ancient foodstuff for us here in Europe, but is representing the concept of early man discovering agriculture, early man predicting, early man thinking, hey, if I plant a seed, in 12 months' time, I will get fruit. Early man realizing, if I stay here, later in the season, berries will come on that bush. The concept of that prediction as early man, that concept of early man understanding cause and effect. If I do this, I get this. That for me is all represented by a potato. Now the potato is effectively for me Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the shelter and food right at the bottom. Before mankind could think of any deeper, further thoughts into the future, they had to handle the here and now. How am I going to get fed? What am I going to do next? So the ability to predict simple for us but very complex things for them, such as agriculture, food, the seasons, really helped mankind start building foundations of civilization. So, what's object number 3? Well, object number 3 is another food, but not the humble potato anymore. No. This time it's the simple apple. And the apple is here to represent science. The metaphor of Isaac Newton when the apple landed on his head and he discovered the concept of gravity. Or prediction through science, or prediction through the scientific method. Discovered in the Middle Ages, in the Enlightenment pretty much for me, the idea of having an idea, the idea of having a concept, a thought, and then having a hypothesis, and then running experiments to test those hypotheses. That's the idea for me here. I have a prediction of what will come next, and the experiment will either prove that prediction true. Well, actually experiments can't prove truth, can they? But they can definitely prove it when it's false. So that's the third object, the apple, representing scientific prediction or prediction through the scientific world. Welcome to the next one in the series, a toy tank. Now the idea behind this is the German tank problem. So back in World War II, the Allies were trying to calculate how many heavy Panzer V German tanks there were available in Europe. Conventional intelligence said not many, but there were rumours just before D-Day that the number was far higher than expected. So traditionally, how people would discover how many tanks there are is conventional intelligence, which is sneaky people sneaking around. But they actually decided to apply statistical analysis to this problem. What they effectively did was look at their captured or broken tanks they have found, and then they used the statistical analysis on some of the chassis numbers or the wheel numbers to have an idea of how many of these tanks are out there. Then they used a little bit of expert advice and a big lump of statistics to come up with a number of how many tanks they think have been created by early 1944. I've got the number here. I think it is, they expected about 270 tanks to have been produced. At the end of the war, they discovered the actual number was 276. Now, this type of analysis gained great fame and is known as the German tank problem as a way of describing this type of statistical analysis. This, for me, is again prediction, but it's a prediction through statistics and predictions through mathematics. You know what? We could have chosen a load of different things on this subject. There are a range of agile methods out there doing this sort of stuff, and everything from on the stock market down to things like Monte Carlo simulations. But for me, who could resist a toy tank? Boom. Number 5 could be this. Yes, I think you can all tell this is the queen from a game of chess. Yeah? The queen from the game of chess. This is representing sort of prediction through games. Now, the game of chess is a game of prediction, a game of analysis, a game of trying to guess your opponent's next move. And this game can be improved by expert knowledge, by skill, by practice, by analysis. However, this game, I'm afraid to say, has been heavily cracked by computers. Things like Deep Blue and all the computers that have come since, chess games developed on bespoke hardware, analysing the millions of moves and then processing that appropriately and making choices, making the game of chess really rather difficult to play. So the 6th piece is something far more interesting for me than chess. It is poker. This is the poker chip, and this is representing the game of poker. Now, I love the game of poker, I will not lie. It's great fun. Yes, it requires analysis. Yes, it requires deep thought. Yes, it requires reading books, etc. if you want to get any good at it. But more fundamentally, there's a huge element of uncertainty or an element of chance there. But even more important than that, there's an element of humanity. Because in the game of poker, sometimes it doesn't matter what the math says. It doesn't matter what the science says, what the skill says, and what the book says. Sometimes when you look a friend in the eye and you know they're bluffing, you gotta call that bluff. That aspect of humanity, science, maths, statistics wrapped together is far more interesting than the basic old chess to me. This seems to be where we're heading in the future of the world of work. There's a little bit more uncertainty wrapped into this fellow than some people would like to admit. The 7th object is inspired by an article I read online by Morgan Housel. I'll put the link here somewhere. His article was about the uncertainty of prediction. So my 7th object is a lovely surprise present. Yay! Because his article was about history being the study of the past to predict the future, and the trouble is, history is full of surprising events. He quotes a myriad of famous authors on uncertainty, like Nassim Taleb. He talks about how his example from Black Swan about the Fukushima nuclear power plant, which was engineered to withstand the strongest earthquake Japan has ever had. They had looked into the past, looked at the earthquakes they had had, and engineered to be able to defeat any of those prior experiences. But alas, never engineered for the tsunami that they had never had before. So what they said was, it wasn't a failure of analysis, it was a failure of imagination. That's my problem. I always talk about all process being scar tissue. The trouble is, that new process on that scar could be fixing the wrong problem. I've got something I'd like to read you here from the article. Daniel Kahneman was once asked how we should respond when we make an analysis mistake, and he said, whenever we are surprised by something, even if we admit we made a mistake, we say, oh, we'll never make that mistake again. But in fact, what you should learn when you make a mistake, because you did not anticipate something, is that the world is difficult to anticipate. That's the correct lesson to learn from surprises, that the world is surprising. You see, unexpected things are unexpected. Surprising things are surprising. Oh, a Care Bear. Surprising, I guess. With object 8 and 9, we're going to step right back to the start of this video and back to 2001 again. You see, this object, I mentioned it in terms of proto-man and monoliths, but actually This is a great story, okay? This is symbolizing man's ability to predict the future via narrative and via storytelling. Arthur C. Clarke was renowned for discovering many new ideas before the scientists actually discovered them. Genuine science fiction, foreseeing possible futures. And actually, if you read 2001, it's got a load of predictions in it. But alas, a lot of them never came true. Pan Am went bankrupt, I think, in the 90s. Never made it to 2001. Because you see, this is now the past to us. There was something that came true. I think he did actually invent the concept of the iPad in that video, interestingly enough. And so there were some predictions that came true and some weren't. But the aim was not to predict the future. The aim was to create a great story, a great narrative. But it was a very compelling, positive vision of the future. So should Object 8 be the iPad? Should it be 2001? I think the story's more important than any mere artifact, though number 9 is the dark side of that coin. Now here I wanted to use George Orwell's book 1984, a symbol of dystopian nightmare, a narrative of the future that is dark and miserable. Yet I couldn't find my copy of 1984 in the house. What I did find was this: Realm of Chaos, Slave to Darkness. I tell you now, I don't think I'll put a nerdier thing in a video than this. This is a book from my childhood. This is a book from Games Workshop. This is the rules and regulations for one of their role-playing and tabletop games that a lot of us played when we were young, naive, and very, very sweet. This book is the ultimate in what they call grimdark. The idea of the chaos gods, these evil monsters that dominate the universe, mankind's hanging on by a thread, everything is nihilistic and miserable. Judge Dredd on steroids, dystopian nightmare, 1984, oh my gosh, that's the Teletubbies compared to this stuff. This is a vision of the future that is very depressing and very dark and very sinister. The reason I put these two books in here is one of these could be seen to be the optimistic, positive view of the future. Mankind is going to go to the stars and become the stars. And one of these is mankind, yeah, he's going to the stars and going to discover unimaginable horror both out there and in here. Which of these visions of the future could be true? Which of these narratives could come true for us? I don't know. I've got a feeling which one we're living at the moment, but I'm not going to say that in this video. But the idea of prediction as storytelling. Prediction as storytelling of the future. But that brings me to Object 10. Now, I would love for this to have been something grand and grandiose like humanity. The concept of humanity predicting the future, bringing something like Cynefin in, embracing uncertainty, understanding that the complex world is very unknowable and must be experimented. There's 1,000 ways we could have gone, and so I decided to go very small indeed. This single, Making Plans for Nigel by XTC. I've had this song played at me so many times in my life. As a little one, as a medium one, even as a big one. I even play it in my training courses and workshops these days, if only just to take ownership of it so it doesn't get played at me. Making Plans for Nigel. The idea of Object 10 is we make plans for ourselves. Not on a macro level, not at a species level like Arthur C. Clarke or Games Workshop talks about, not at an anthropological level like we spoke about in terms of the chicken bones and the apples and the potatoes, but just me. As a human being, I predicted my future and made decisions. I'm married, I have children, I had a house, I have a house. To misquote Robert Burns, the best laid schemes of mice and men go often askew. We know things are going to change. We know change is going to happen to us, to the world, yet still we make our little plans. It gives us a little bit of security, makes us have a little bit of safety, makes us feel a little bit more comfortable about our lives, even though we know things are going to change. Making plans for Nigel. And on top of the 10, we got some honourable mentions from other people. I can't go into all of them, but we had the idea of luxury goods like soap from our team and wanted to launch into a discussion on sort of Keynesian economics. Bit political for me, that one. And Ian came up with the idea of a CD, purely because it was a technology that superseded another, and then in the future was superseded by the technology it superseded, i.e. vinyl again. All interesting ideas. I think this could be a great topic to carry on in the comments. If we get a good thing going there, maybe we could talk about it in a future podcast. So that's my history of prediction through 10 objects. Is it really the history of predictability in 10 artifacts? I don't know. But what can we learn from this? What was the point of doing this? Well, let's look back. I started with the chicken bones, the idea of prophecy, the idea of imagining the future, blaming outside forces for our lives. We've moved past that concept. We've taken ownership of our own lives. Take it to Agile. It goes from being the development team blaming those management gods for their faults to taking ownership and dealing with their own lives. It's about the potato. We've got to make sure that our teams in Agile, we have psychological safety. We have that proverbial food, that shelter. We can see the consequences of our actions in terms of planting seeds and growing. Psychological safety, building safe environments for teams to stay together and build societies in work and not just be mercenaries. Look at the apple, the scientific method. How do we bring that into Agile? That's about running experiments and learning, lean startup, Scrum itself, inspect and adapt. Look at prediction through maths, the toy tank. This is the world of Kanban, the world of Monte Carlo, the world of measurements. We bring that into the Agile space as well. We don't just live on ritual and ceremony. We are science-based, we are maths-based, we are clever people. Look at the other things we brought up. It's not like chess. You can't know it all. It's more like poker. There's a huge element of chance in there, a huge element of people in there, a huge element of probabilities in there. The uncertainty, that article I told you about, the uncertainty of prediction. Think about what we used there. What was the metaphor for that? What was the metaphor for that? What was the metaphor for that one? I can't remember what the metaphor for that one was. What was the metaphor for... Look at in terms of the psychology of prediction, the fact that surprises are surprising, the fact that we always have unexpected surprises, they're always from somewhere else. I'm surrounded by Care Bears. I did not expect that at the start of the video. The unexpected surprise gift, I guess. Look at it in terms of narrative, in terms of a positive view of the future, using prediction to create story, a story of the future that perhaps we could go on that journey. I haven't mentioned that. The two things I mentioned were both novels, but we could actually look at this storytelling as devices to help make social change in the world. Finally, it all comes back to you, the individual, your family, making plans for Nigel, the single. In the end, we are part of this society, but it's also about us making small decisions and taking small steps in a big scary world. If we overthink it, we're doomed. So in Agile, we may think big, but we step small and we understand things are going to change. That's a history of prediction in 10 objects. It's a translation of those 10 objects into Agile. And this has been a hard video to make, so I hope you don't mind if I finish it there for now. Could you please share these videos on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or any form of these model social media things, or these modern ones that I don't use? It would be really great for me. I am saying now that I'm actually going to start doing these videos only once a week, because this one took a lot of effort to put together, and I've got another video to do next week for a user group. So I think once a week is what I'm going to turn into for these videos. Mainly to give each one space to breathe and to be shared and to be thought about before I put the next one out. There's nothing worse than releasing too frequently and annoying your customers. So once a week from now on. But please tell me if you'd like to go back to 2 a week, or if you'd like me to revisit any other of these subjects that we've gone through before. Let me now move on from here. Thank you for watching. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have also. And I'll see you again next time. Say bye, everyone.
Bye.
Cheerio.
Next episode, license revoked. Some work on how to be a secret change agent.